Tonight on News 5 Live, News 5 takes you on an exclusive visit of the KHMH's COVID-19 unit. Meanwhile, a headless body was discovered in Cayo. This Christian Workers Union says they will not wait until after elections to sign a collective bargaining agreement. And a look at what distance learning is like for special needs children. Details of these stories and more coming up in tonight's newscast.
Currently, we're using Smart Elite VoIP calling plan. We use it interbranch, we use it to call outside, and we also use it to call international. It's far cheaper than what we used to have before. Our equipment, our new PBX box is new. So the PBX is very good because I can call to my Sartaneja branch, I can call to my Kikaker branch, I can call to San Pedro branch, and they
Good evening. Welcome to News 5 Live for Wednesday, January 27th. I am Marlene Cuellar. The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted thousands across the country, including those on the front line in the medical profession. Since the first case in Belize was recorded back in March of last year, limited access has been granted to the media to view firsthand how the COVID-19 unit at the Carl Huchner Memorial Hospital operates. It's been 1 year since health officials began tracking the virus's progress from China to Belize, and almost a year since the first cases were recorded in the country. Tonight, News 5's Isani Cayetano gets exclusive access to the COVID-19 unit and the work that's being done on the front line in the fight against the disease. Here's that story.
In mid-January 2020, local health officials became aware of an unusual respiratory illness that was quickly spreading across China. At the time, there wasn't much that was known about the virulent disease other than the fact that it was thought to be natural and had originated from animals through what is known as a spillover event. Chief Executive Officer Michelle Hoare of the Carl Huchner Memorial Hospital Authority recalls her first COVID-19 notification.
In January of 2020, I received a text message that there may be admissions coming from the Philip Goldson International Airport to KHMH with a diagnosis of COVID. What will be our response? Will we be able to accept these cases? And I was like, are we there already?
By early February, the United States began recording COVID-19 casualties, and that's when Belize took serious note of the propagation of the novel coronavirus.
We started, of course, I organized a meeting with my management team. Of course, we've been tracking the news internationally. And so I organized a meeting with the management team to say, listen, this thing is getting serious. COVID wasn't even declared a pandemic yet, but we needed to start at least planning what would be our response in the event it is declared a pandemic. Because we know that once it's declared a pandemic, border countries affected, Belize will be at risk.
Part of that planning included the establishment of the COVID-19 unit, an entity within the National Referral Hospital dedicated to patients who either tested positive for the disease or were under investigation as potential cases.
We receive all COVID positive patients who are in distress. We manage them here. We have a bed capacity of 23 that we can house, and we have a bed capacity of 13 that we can hold for patients who are under investigation. That means that they're not positive yet, but we are waiting for the results.
Belize's first COVID-19 case was recorded in March of last year. However, the first person to be admitted for treatment came sometime thereafter as a referral from the Western Regional Hospital. By then, KHMH had been prepared, having already procured the necessary equipment, including ventilators, and retrofitted the facility to accommodate COVID patients.
The plan was to prepare an isolation critical care space. That meant in terms of resource that we had to provide the required oxygen support. We had to prepare the necessary ventilators, infusion pumps, cardiac monitors, and those types of equipment. And so we started our procurement process for ventilators, KHMH as an authority, and again, sharing with Ministry our plans, they were able to provide additional support. So we started initially with 4 additional ventilators for critical care, COVID critical care management, and the Ministry quickly procured an additional 6 for us.
Those breathing machines were placed here, in the wing of the hospital that was once the accident and emergency section. This area has been modified to treat patients with varying degrees of COVID-19 related illness. Notwithstanding the medical equipment and beds that are presently available at the unit, lack of human resources remains an issue.
One of our biggest challenges, of course, is because we have a lot of patients and we have limited amount of nurses. So our human resources is one of our biggest challenges that we are facing right now. Problem that we probably had in the past, like not having enough equipment and having enough cardiac monitors. We are not seeing that as a challenge, but more of human resources aspect.
Late last year, when a significant increase in the number of cases was recorded, the health system became overwhelmed. The ratio of nurses and doctors to patients suffering from COVID-19 was severely lopsided.
The demand on the human resource was really challenging because we saw more and more that now the country was in a response mode, not only KHMH, and so as other areas within the health sector, the public health sector, ran into their own set of challenges because of exposures, because of quarantine, whatever, we had to sit down and actually share resources, and human resource became a part of that sharing.
Cuba's Henry Reeve International Medical Brigade arrived in country to lend assistance with Belize's COVID response. However, coupled with a mounting death toll, the situation, particularly for frontline personnel, became dire. Not all were prepared to mentally cope with what they were experiencing firsthand, and at times, it proved too much to bear.
Seeing patients die, sometimes we would hear from them, what they go through to just see patients die each time, and it became very challenging, it became hard on them. And so that level of psychological support, we had to intervene by providing that level of counseling, whether it's one-on-one, whether it's through peer support or specialist intervention. We had to find a way to support the staff.
Casilda Bowman is head of the COVID-19 Patients Under Investigation Unit. She's seen it all where patient mortality is concerned.
It's hard when we lose patients. I see the psychological effects that most people don't get to see on the outside, They see us come to work, but they don't understand how hard it is, One, we are away from our families because we have to self-isolate. And two, we do form some sort of attachment to our patients. Even though we're in a suit, they can't see us as much, but we do have a connection to them. And when they don't survive, it really impacts us.
Reporting for News 5, I am Isane Cayetano.
There have been 11,788 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Belize. Of that number, 293 deaths have been reported. It is a case fatality rate of approximately 2.5%. Not all of those who tested positive for the disease were admitted to the ward at the KHMH, and not all who died of COVID-related causes passed away at the KHMH. CEO Michelle Hoare gave the breakdown of COVID-19 patients admitted to the hospital.
Since we started our heightened surveillance in January of last year, 2020, we saw over 500 patients that were screened for SARS-CoV-2 virus. Of that total, we had 206 being positive and 257 discharges. 116 died to date. Right? So those were our numbers. Not everybody that came through were admitted. Of that total positive, we had some being discharged and some being admitted. And then, of course, of that total, again, there's a total that was ventilated. So the total admitted was 166. And of that total, we had 65 being ventilated.
We have well over 11,000 cases on record. Mm-hmm. Are you saying, just for my clarity, are you saying that those were the actual numbers that came through the KHMH, notwithstanding the 11,000 plus figure?
Right. That these are patients that actually access care at KHMH, right? So depending on where they come from, then they become a suspect case. They have to be swabbed. Depending on because there's a screening process that takes place at our triage point. So if they fit the criteria for COVID, they're admitted to the COVID isolation as a suspect case. They're tested, and depending on the result, they're either admitted in the COVID isolation or they are sent to the general patient care area for admission.
Dr. Marvin Manzanero was the face of the country's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. But tonight, the good doctor is still on the road to recovery. Dr. Manzanero shared that he considers his mental and emotional recovery almost complete. He says that as someone who doesn't really get sick, this has been a rather difficult recovery process. Physically, Dr. Manzanero says it has taken longer than expected. His sick leave applications expired on Friday, but he has applied for a couple of weeks more to complete some examinations, after which he says, quote, he'll return to my duties, unquote. But what duties exactly? Dr. Melissa Diaz is Acting Director of Health Services, and the government has suggested that she is the person best to lead the country's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Minister of Health and Wellness, Michelle Shabat, has gone on record to say that, quote, actually, we look forward to his full recovery and for his reincorporation into the Ministry of Health and Wellness. And we do expect that he's going to be a part of this team, helping to advise and to lead the country along the correct path, unquote. In Cayo, a mason worker from the Santiago Juan layout near the Bullet Tree Road in San Ignacio was found dead. His decapitated body was discovered hanging from a tree in the Contiki area. Police information suggests that Oscar Correa killed himself by hanging, but his family believes someone killed him. The family says that Correa was his usual self when he left home almost a month ago. The father of 5 told his family that he was going into town to meet some friends, and that was the last time they saw him. His decomposed body was discovered on Monday afternoon. Today we spoke with Correa's daughter, Naili, who tells us that they are not willing to label her father's death as suicide because they found that the skull had detached from the skeletal remains at the scene.
The last time we saw him was the 20th of December.
And what was that last time talking with him like?
Well, he seemed like a normal person.
When he left home, did he tell you guys where he was going?
No, he just said he was going to come at the town with some friends, but it seems that he didn't come with no friend downtown.
And when you didn't see him for a while, did you guys grow concerned? Did you file a police report?
Well, we knew something bad has happened because he never did left home without saying anything.
Mm-hmm. And so he never gave you guys any indication that something was wrong, that he would harm himself?
No, he was acting so kind, so loving, like as usual.
Do you believe that he killed himself?
No.
What makes you think that?
Because his head was on the ground and his body was complete. His head was already skulled.
So you believe somebody decapitated him, took his head off?
We more believe that.
Correa's family informed us late this evening that his death was certified as mechanical asphyxia due to hanging. They say there were no other injuries on the body. A well-known gang figure, Jervis Diamond Valencia from Mayflower Street in Belize City, is in a hospital recovering from a shooting incident on Monday evening. Reports say Valencia was sitting in a yard through an alley off Mayflower Street when around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 men approached him and one of them pulled out a gun and fired several shots in his direction. Valencia was shot in the lower abdomen, groin area and leg. He's hospitalized in a stable condition. Back in July 2020, Valencia walked free from the March 2015 shooting murder of Moses Gunges that happened on Mayflower Street in Belize City. The Senate meets on Thursday in a special sitting to ratify a United Nations convention that will advance Belize's international obligations as a member of the organization. The United Nations Convention on the Recognition and Enforcement of Foreign Arbitral Awards was recognized in October 1980, before Belize became an independent nation. However, it will be only presented to the upper house for consideration on January 28th. In a release issued by the government earlier today, Belize is one of only 33 countries that has failed to ratify the agreement. The objective of formalizing the agreement, which was in process before the November 2020 general elections, is to enable a potential debt-to-conservation related transaction that can improve the state of Belize's public finances. The government of Belize says, quote, it looks forward to the Senate process, which with its opportunity to fully describe and debate the importance of this convention, confident that the benefit of ratification is manifold." Unquote. There's more news after the break, so stay tuned.
Contraband is illegal importation of fruits and vegetables or any commodities entering the country.
We will do everything possible not to retrench anyone. Those are Prime Minister Briceño's words on Tuesday when speaking about budget preparation for the upcoming financial year. In March, PM Briceño will present his first budget. It will be a challenge considering the debt accumulated under the Barrow administration, that revenue collection has decreased by 30%, and the economy continues to struggle to get back on its feet. It is no secret that the massive wage bill and the pension bill account for 80% of the budget. So the government has tasked several of its ministers, supplemented by a technical team, to meet with public service representatives and the Belize National Teachers Union to discuss a way forward as part of budget consultations.
We are getting a hold of the entire situation. Today we had a presentation on the finances of the budget, how it has played out for 2020, 2021. And now we will start the budget consultations. We have set up two teams. We have asked Minister Fonseca, the Minister of Education, and the previous Minister of the Public Service to lead the consultations, along with the Minister of Public Service, Minister Henry Charles Usher, and also the Deputy Prime Minister, with a technical team to be able to meet with the Public Service Union and with the teachers, with the BNTU to have a discussion as to the present situation and the way forward. How is it that we're going to address this massive fiscal imbalance that we have? Myself, along with Minister Koi, we will then, along with a technical team, will be meeting with the private sector and the social partners. The facts are this, that the revenues that the government expected to collect is down about 30%, by about over $300 million. The fact is that it took Belize as a country, government, 17 years to be able to borrow a little over $500 million. This UDP government, under this fiscal year, has dug a $500 million fiscal hole. What it took Belize 17 years, the UDP did it in 1 year. $500 million, that's what we have, that we have to be able to address. So we need to be able to see how we work with our partners, the unions and the social partners, and also with the private sector, as to how is it that we are going to be able to address this issue and to be able to grow the economy. It has to do with growing the economy, collecting the revenues there, so that we are not a government of retrenchment. They will do everything possible not to retrench anyone.
What is the future of the food assistance program? Minister of Human Development Dolores Valderramas Garcia has publicly stated that the program has funds that will continue to the end of the financial year, essentially 2 more months. The ministry merged the COVID-19 food assistance program and the grocery bag program, formerly known as Pantry, at the start of the year. The revamped program was aimed at helping the most vulnerable families in the country. Going into a new fiscal year, Prime Minister Briceño says his government is actively doing everything possible to keep the program going.
Remember that you only could borrow so much, and what the UDP was doing, they were borrowing and spending as if there is no tomorrow, and in many instances they were spending recklessly. A lot of the monies that were borrowed should have lasted us till March of this year, but because of their recklessness and going into an election, they spent everything. So then we had to scramble to try to find new monies. So as it is, what we want to do now is to see where are the avenues, where is there that we can possibly find more funding to be able to continue this program as best as we possibly can and as long as we possibly could afford.
The opposition United Democratic Party says it will challenge the terminations of about 24 terminal workers and other terminations reported across the country. On George Price Day, the 24 workers at the Novelas bus terminal in Belize City were given their walking paper, and a total of 60 employees in the Department of Transport were let go. There are also reports of terminations at the Northern Regional Hospital. The opposition asserts that these persons were discriminated against because of their political affiliation. But PM Briceño says that the UDP's case holds no water. PM Briceño says that the UDP should be ashamed of crying wolf because former Prime Minister Dean Barrow made no apologies for firing persons when the UDP became government.
They should look at the mirror. They were the worst offenders, man. They should be ashamed to even bring that up, man. They should both be ashamed. And the thing is that we have not gotten to know any kind of political victimization. If that was the case from day one, we would have been letting go a lot of people. There are a lot of people in the system that are only there simply because they are UDP supporters, and we're trying our best to work with them. But if they don't want to work with us, then we may have to find ways how we can part ways.
I guess that is their responsibility as an opposition to do what they want, and when they go to court, the court will determine if it was so, if it was bad, or it was good.
The criticism, though, however, is that the PUP is hiring more than what they fired.
That's absolutely not true. Because when we recommended some people, and representatives from around the country request that some people go back, then we tell the other person that we can't take you because we have a limit that we can't take anymore.
The Christian Workers Union is taking the Belize City Council to task over a collective bargaining agreement or the steps that need to be taken to get to that agreement. According to CWU, the City Council has disrespected them by failing to engage on critical issues. The CWU is asking the Council to provide their counter-proposal to the CBA, and the CWU had sent in since October 2019. The CW says that it has been 15 months and the City Council has failed to respond in a meaningful way and commit to presenting their counter-proposal, and now the CW's membership is tired of waiting. Today, the president of the CW, Evan Moshyde, called a virtual briefing to update the media about the matter. He outlines the two principal issues that have brought them to this crossroads with the Belize City Council.
Those disputes, namely, one, that we were informed early January that the Belize City Council would not be able to provide us with counter proposals on our new CBA before March 31st, 2021. And we outlined in that press release why we felt and why we feel like that is an unacceptable response. We described the situation where we made our proposals, our version of the proposals, back in October of 2019, and that we have tried both formally and informally to inquire about when we could expect a response. The second matter of concern for us was the abrupt transfers of 3 of our reps without any prior notification or involvement from CWU. After our chief rep was transferred, we asked for a meeting with Belize City Council so that we could express our concerns about how it was done. And we lamented the lack of engagement, the lack of prior notice, the lack of input. So we were very disappointed, obviously, when in the aftermath of that, 2 more of our reps were transferred.
According to the CW, the Belize City Council is not forthcoming with a counter-proposal, and their membership refuses to accept it. Mayor Bernard Wagner has indicated that the council will not provide a counter-proposal or engage in negotiations as they're heading into the municipal elections. He wants to leave the CBA business until March 31st because, according to the City Council, they refuse to bind any future council with last-minute contracts. Now, according to the Belize City Council, the CW is pushing for staff increments that amount to $500,000 every year. The council says that other proposals include a 30% increase in the funeral grant, an increase in severance eligibility payments, new increased salary scales, increase in allowances, and some of which have doubled and tripled among other proposed measures. So Mayor Wagner is sticking to his guns that the issue will be dealt with after the elections. But President of the CW, Evan Moshyde, told reporters that he cannot accept this position and refuses to see the pandemic as a hindrance to the process.
The process of presenting a proposal and getting a counter proposal is the equivalent of getting into the bargaining period. And so to be denied a counter proposal is to be denied a standard right of a bargaining agent and its members to engage in respectful negotiations. We cannot begin to negotiate until we know what in our proposals you have a problem with. The counter proposals usually take about 6 weeks, roughly, for us to get a response. And so the fact that we are now 15 months or 16 months in this kind of circling pattern, waiting and waiting to get our counter proposals is absolutely unacceptable. And in our view, we don't have an explanation for it. We cannot accept that the pandemic has been so disruptive that the matter of having a replacement upgraded version of the present workers' contract is unable to be completed, or at the very least, a counter proposal presented to us. What we are asking for, what we expect, is a routine, standard, fair, reasonable engagement with the bargaining agent to start the process of negotiations.
Attorney Esteban Pereira remains the chairman of the Elections and Boundaries Commission despite calls from the new administration for him to resign. Earlier this month, Pereira issued a letter quoting Section 88 of the Constitution, which speaks to how a person by law is removed from the commission, and that the appointment should not be confused with those made for statutory boards. Today, News 5 spoke to the chairman, who seems to be having a change of heart.
That matter is still being considered by me. I'm not in a position to speak on it yet. As soon as I am, I will let you know. I will be in a position to speak about it shortly before the end of this week. But because of certain considerations, personal considerations that I am looking at, I'm not in a position to respond to that as yet.
Sir, so you're having a change of heart?
It's not about a change of heart. And when you read the document I sent out to the news companies that were presented, I clearly indicated that the letter was to educate the public as to what the position entails and what is required of the position, and that it did not signify a decision either as to whether or not I would remain or not remain in the position.
It would appear that our news story on the plight of the Shish family from San Ignacio reached the eyes and ears of the insurance company. That's because today, after a period of unanswered calls, messages, and even a demand letter from an attorney, the insurance company finally responded to the family's attorney, Esteban Pereira. Pereira says they were preparing to file a lawsuit against the insurance company and the principals of Bajador Trucking and Backhoe Services for the hardship Shish and her family have been enduring for almost 2 months after a dump truck ran off the road and into their house. Pereira says that they expect the family to receive a new wooden house and all matters settled by week's end.
We sent them all the documents that they requested: proof of ownership of the land, proof of ownership, a list of items that were damaged, including some cost estimates for the replacement of a home for the family. Now, since December, we had continued to communicate with ICB up until the 7th of January. However, after that, as our client has indicated, things did go completely silent, it's a sad event, no? Especially since we have made it known to both the owner of the vehicle as well as to the insurance company the severity of this situation and what it really, the hardship that it brings when someone is without a house. Since the report that was made yesterday, this morning we received communication once again from the insurance company, and I believe that they will now look at the matter and hopefully we can have a settlement by the end of this week so that the need for a lawsuit would not be required. All insurance companies should be encouraged to resolve these matters in a faster, more competent way, so that persons could feel assured that relief would be forthcoming quickly.
After the break, we show you what distance learning with a special needs child looks like. The distance learning approach has been in effect since the 2020 school year began. At the start of every week, weekly packages are picked up, completed by students, and then submitted by the end of the week, while others engage in online classes. But what about students with special needs? News 5's Dwayne Moody visited with the Stephen family, whose youngest member is autistic, to find out what the experience has been like and how they're coping.
Meet Eric Stephen. He's celebrating his 7th birthday today with his family at their home in the Westlake community in Western Paradise Village. But he's autistic, diagnosed about 2 years ago at level 3 on the autism spectrum, which is the more severe level of autism. And keeping him and his siblings engaged during these COVID times has been a challenge.
It's been extremely challenging. It's quite a task of teaching, because the reality is that we're now teaching our children. The curriculum that's set forth at the beginning of the year is rigid, especially for my children who are in private school. The first two are in private school, and there's a level of expectation in terms of their performance, in terms of their level of learning. And so it's been a real challenge when you have to have that mix of a balance of your work, in terms of your secular job, rearing your kids in terms of their usual social interactions, their education, as well as the work that you have to do at your home.
Eric is the youngest of 3 children. He has a 9-year-old brother and an 11-year-old sister, while his older siblings remain occupied with distance learning packages as they try not to lag behind in their educational development. Eric's process is different. Giselle Stevens says that through a lot of research and support from Autism Belize, she and her husband have put in place tools to help along the way.
It's a challenge, even without COVID, it's a challenge raising a child with autism, but at the same time, it's extremely rewarding, because Eric is such a sweetheart when you get to know him. When you see that personality comes out, he's one of the most mischievous children. But autism affects their ability to communicate. It's a developmental disability, but it affects their ability to interact socially. It affects their ability to communicate. Some are nonverbal, some may have difficulties in just expressing themselves. And then there's also repetitive behavior. So for him, a schedule is very important. So with all the changes that COVID has brought us, the fact that he's no longer in a classroom setting has been an adjustment in his normal routine, so that throws him off completely. Whenever that happens, there is what you call behavioral issues. You could hear him screaming just now in the background. Behavior could end up being where he's hurting himself, whether by biting or hitting, or he will hit others. So us, his siblings, the babysitter. So it's been a challenge as to how do we help him to adjust to this not normal situation.
Eric is a student at Stella Maris Primary School, which the family says has been very hands-on with their son's learning curve. Eric also gets his weekly packages and would do sign language, letters, numbers, and coloring.
Sometimes our schedule changes on a whim, and so we're not able to prepare him. Sometimes we use what we call social stories. So we would use our little cards that we have and we'll form a story. We would create the list of, okay, we're leaving home. We're going into the car, so you'll have a picture of us leaving home, the car, a shopping cart maybe for the supermarket, and we'll have to show him what the day looks like. Speech therapy is very important tool for him, and unfortunately it's not always readily available here. There's a cost attached to it, but part of our support groups, one of the support groups I'm in had shown me a link where they were giving free speech therapy. So for the last 6 months, he was in a speech therapy course where every Monday we'll have a virtual training with a speech therapist. Stella Maris so far has really worked wonders for us. His teacher Foreman, has been an inspiration to us. She's one teacher that I can say has a passion for her children. She goes above and beyond.
Giselle Stevens says that they have incorporated weekly scheduled fun activities for the entire family such as the movie night on Fridays and games night on Saturdays, which helps with coping with the stresses associated with COVID-19 and the restrictions in place. Dwayne Moody for News 5.
The Briceño administration has established a COVID-19 education task force to help guide the government in delivering quality, accessible education during the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has dealt a blow to education, with regular classroom sessions suspended since March of last year. So the idea is for the task force to provide specific recommendations for the safe and responsible reopening of schools for face-to-face instruction in the new school year, tentatively in August 2021. Among those on the task force are Special Envoy Rossana Briceño, Senators Isabel Bennett and Elena Smith, and Acting DHS Melissa Diaz Musa, Principals Jamie Usher and Salome Tillett. Rounding off the members are Martine King of Mind Health Connect and a member of the UB Faculty and Staff Union and the President of the National Student Union of Belize. The United Democratic Party, now led by former Minister of Education Patrick Faber, responded to the task force's formation. In a release, the UDP says that the government has blatantly disregarded partnership in education and inclusiveness, failing to compose a task force that reflects the education sector. It speaks to school proprietors and managements having been snubbed and excluding a rep from technical and vocational education. Last week, the newly appointed Special Envoy for the Development of Families and Children spoke about working with various organizations to ensure the elderly and persons with special needs are cared for. On Monday, the Belize Association for Persons with Diverse Abilities, also known as BAPTA, met with the Minister of Human Development, Families and Indigenous Peoples Affairs, Dolores Balderramas Garcia. The Minister of State, Gilroy Usher Sr., and CEO Tanya Santos Neal. Several issues were discussed, including the effects of COVID-19, improving building access, legislative amendments, and fulfillment of obligations under the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. At the end of the meeting, it was agreed that a disabilities desk would soon be established within the ministry for greater advocacy and collaboration. High risk, unemployed, and in desperate need of help. When we come back, we'll show you the plea from a father of 4.
It's a fact that you can access unlimited service
When the pandemic hit in early 2020 and tourism collapsed, almost 40,000 Belizeans lost their jobs. Unemployment is tough on all families. But for Jamie Beckford, losing his job last March could not have come at the worst time. Beckford, a father of 4, was diagnosed with hypertensive heart disease 2 years ago. When he was working, he could afford his medical bills. But after 10 months of joblessness, relying on friends and family's kindness, he's out of luck and hoping the persons who hear his story will be willing to assist.
Yeah, I was employed as front desk clerk in San Ignacio here now. And since March, I've been unemployed. I've been a concierge or a front desk clerk for the past 12, 13 years. Various parts in Belize City. Around 2017, I found out that I have this hypertensive heart disease, and I've been, trying to take care of myself since then. But usually I have checkups with Dr. Irvin Gabriel and people in Belize City, but since then I haven't been able to follow up. So, in my view right now, from what I'm experiencing, I think I really need to do another one, either a MRI, endoscopy, and a CT scan. So based on the symptoms that I'm going through right now, my hypertension is through the roof, and like coughing up blood and stuff like that. It's a little bit worrisome now. I feel a sentiment with all of the Belizeans that are going through this. I'm not one. It takes a lot to seek help from other people. I would trust me. I'd wish to go back to work and do all of these things. I love doing what I do. I deal with tourists. I deal with people. So anybody who knows me knows that I've always dealt in tourism. So it's a direct impact to me. What's happening all over the country. It's global, so it's not something that I can do anything about. But by all means, I would want to be able to help myself. I've always had help from a couple of friends. I'm a very private human, so I don't really deal with a lot of people. So I have 1 or 2 best friends, and I also have a sister who has always assisted me. But in this time, everybody's going through their own struggle. So it is frustrating. Staying at home and being that kind of, it's the new norm, as everybody says. It's fine to me. I always stay home. I'm good with that. It's just that I don't like, having to beg people and stuff like that. Everybody will tell you, oh, I have my own problems. But when you look around and you really see that there's not enough money for the rent or food for in the house, then you start to get frustrated, because then you turn around and you say, who's going to help me right now?
If you would like to assist, you can call 635-8169 or deposit to Jamie Beckford's account at Belize Bank, 650-02-2285-150. A virtual town hall discussion is being held tonight to discuss the cannabis industry and its potential economic impact in Belize. The public meeting is part of a consultation process being undertaken by Growth Industries CEO Alex Levine, an entrepreneur in cannabis and hemp production in the United States. The discussion is being organized through the Ministry of New Growth Industries, which falls under Home Affairs Minister Karim Musa's portfolio. While the religious communities criticize the initiative, the government continues to explore new avenues to revitalize economic activity amid the COVID-19 pandemic, including the potential for cannabis tourism. And that's the news. Tonight's broadcast is available in both text and streaming video at channel5belize.com. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page at News 5 Live. I'm Marlene Cuellar. Thanks for joining us. And from all of us here at News 5, please remember to wash your hands, keep your social distance, and stay safe. Good night.